All right, I've got a great show for you today. We're going to be going through some of the biggest news stories out there, including what the heck is going on with Donald Trump and his campaign, a new $100 million lawsuit against the Department of Justice, and more. To do that, I have Charles Gasparino with me. Charles, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
So just some background. Charles is a senior correspondent on Fox Business. He's also the author of Go Woke, Go Broke. This morning, I saw that President Trump, now that his presidential documents lawsuit has been dismissed, he is suing the Department of Justice for $100 million for raiding his home, not utilizing his cooperative lawyers, and giving or having the FBI be given permission to use deadly force if necessary. What are your thoughts on that lawsuit coming to an end and also this $100 million lawsuit?
You know, I'm not a lawyer, although I speak to a lot of them every day. Just from a purely legal standpoint, it sounds like it's going nowhere. I mean, you know, they had probable cause, they had a judge, they had a court order to do what they did. I don't know who you sue, the judge, the Department of Justice. Did they I mean, you have to find that they, you know, the problem is that if you believe there is a deep state, and I think there's good evidence there is, the deep state was aligned against them. And, you know, so they checked all the legal boxes, and there's really nothing he could do as private citizen. Now, as president, I mean, you know, the Department of Justice reports to you. So if he becomes president, you know, you could just imagine what might go on in this case. You know, could he settle with himself? That would be very interesting. I think as a sort of, as it is now, I don't think it goes anywhere. But if he becomes president and this thing doesn't get thrown out of court, you know, in some way, it could be interesting. I mean, it is interesting that, I mean, the way all these cases against Trump, it's all about a sort of a antagonistic government that he might be running. And I say might only because he should be running it based on, you know, who he's running against, but he is running a horrible campaign as far as I'm concerned and blowing it. I mean, listen, I wrote a whole book about corporate wokeness and just how stupid it is. And part of it is political, because I talk about Kamala Harris. She's one of the most woke politicians in America. And yet he can't frame that right. I mean, she said, you know, we need more woke, not less woke. You know, where does she sit on gender affirming care for children? You know, where does she sit on DEI? Is she for it? Well, she obviously is, but a lot of Americans hate it, or else we wouldn't have had the backlash that I chronicle on this book. So just think about it this way. Corporations, and as my book points out, are moving away from corporate wokeness because they hate every part of it. They hate being proselytized on cultural issues. They just want to drink a beer. They don't want to, you know, be told that they have to accept a trans woman influencer as part of their brand, as Budweiser did. You know, they want to go to the movies with their kids. They don't want Disney gratuitously flicking in same-sex kissing scenes while they're eating their popcorn. You know, I mean, I could go down the line. Which I do in the book, and people rebelled against that because it's a loser nationally. Now here it is, the most woke, I guess, politician, one of the most woke politicians there are. I wonder if she can pull it off. You know what I'm saying? Because she is woke. She brags about it just policy-wise. You can just follow her. She's not even smart about it. You know, she doesn't know how to thread the needle. Like someone like Obama could thread the needle on his progressivism and wokeness. You know, Kamala Harris can't. And she hasn't. So will the American people buy this? And they shouldn't be able to buy it unless Donald Trump doesn't make the case in a sort of compelling way. And I tell you, you know, you're not making the case in a compelling way when the sort of the airwaves are being, you know, you're taking time to attack the Georgia governor or Joe Rogan or whoever, you know, over stupid stuff. So, you know, that's where we are right now. This is his to lose. Wokeness should play a big part in this campaign because my book says it doesn't sell. I don't know how it's going to sell the American people unless you don't you ignore what she does and her record, and you just go after all this other stupid stuff he's been wasting time on.
Why do you think corporate America started to buy into this idea of going woke, having these like anti-white employee meetings, making sure LGBTQ was the number one thing talked about in corporate newsletters? Was this BlackRock from behind pushing forward an agenda? Did this naturally bloom on its own? How did this happen?
Well, like any cultural revolution, it starts out slow, and the forces on the other side are very determined. There's always been an activist wing of the Democratic Party that has tried to infiltrate Wall Street and corporate America to get them to change the way they operate and their cultural norms. What's interesting about wokeness is as you had those activists sort of essentially going after corporate America, back in the early mid 1990s, you had the notion of wokeness and its various elements: diversity, equity, inclusion, environmental, social, government investing, where you are an asset manager and you tell your invested company, the company you invest in, you have to do X, Y, and Z. You have to reduce your carbon footprint. You have to have diversity writ large. You have to do this. You have to give back to the community, not just make money for your shareholders and employ people, which automatically gives money back to the community, which creates diversity if you employ people, as long as you don't break the law and discriminate. And we have laws against that. This started being discussed at Davos, places where at the UN at first, but then Davos, all these confabs where these CEOs gathered, and you had a new brand of CEO that was becoming much more progressive, educated at Harvard, Yale, you name it, and being educated by a more progressive teaching class. And then slowly but surely, wokeness started infiltrating the boardroom. In 2019, you had the Business Roundtable, which is the biggest business lobby group of the top 100 corporations in America, say we're going to get rid of shareholder capitalism, which is the Milton Friedman model of worry about, do stuff within the legality and ethics, but make sure your top priority is the shareholder and doing your job as a CEO. That got defenestrated for stakeholder capitalism, which literally opened the door to corporate wokeness and ESG and DEI, because it's all about making the world a better place according to progressive progressive rationale of that. So then you had George Floyd, and George Floyd was a tipping point for a lot of stuff. I mean, the country was in lockdown mode, except you didn't have to wear your mask unless you wanted to protest, police brutality. And, then because the country was losing its mind, corporate America really lost its mind at that point. And it's an inflection point I discuss in the book, and I go through all the examples. Jamie Dimon running around talking about, how a police brutality case is essentially what happened in Minneapolis, of a guy, whacked out on fentanyl, who, he didn't deserve a death penalty for trying to pass a counterfeit $20 bill. I want to make that really clear. But he did try to pass a counterfeit $20 bill in a convenience store in Minneapolis. He did resist arrest, and the cop did get rough with him. He didn't deserve to die, but he did die. But that got conflated with the notion that we need reparations, racial justice reparations writ large. And corporate America lost its mind. If you go through, you see in the book, there's this great scene where Bank of America says we're going to do a $2 billion or 1.5, I can't remember the exact number, it was in the billions, dollar racial equity fund, as if George Floyd got a low interest loan, he would have, not tried to pass off the counterfeit 20. I mean, it's so stupid. But in any event, or the cop wouldn't have did what he did if George Floyd got the loan. It's so dumb. Jamie Dimon says, that's the second biggest bank. We're the biggest. We got to go one step further. They do a $36 billion fund. By the way, neither JP Morgan or Bank of America would tell me, did this stuff is there any numbers on this? They, that how it worked, but obviously didn't work, or else they'd be telling me and they'd be touting it. And then Jamie Dimon was seen taken a knee at a bank branch, in a photo of him visiting a bank branch right around the time of the protests. He visited a bank branch in Mount Kisco, New York. We all asked, is he now 100% on the social justice, the side of Black Lives Matter and the social justice movement? And, the PR people were like, we're not going to comment. Jamie, believe what you want. So we all assumed that's why he took a knee. Just to show you how the tide has turned, when I'm fact checking the book, and I mentioned this at the end, I said, listen, I'm mentioning this thing where he took a knee. And they were like, yeah, everybody got that wrong. He wasn't taking a knee for Black Lives Matter. He was taking a knee purely to fit in the picture because there was, he would have obstructed the view of the people behind him. And I said, dude, it took you like 4 years and probably complaints from all your customers in Texas and Florida and everywhere else about that for you to go there. I mean, why didn't you tell me that at first? Oh, we didn't. We thought we'd let it. It's bullshit, obviously. And here's the thing. It's because wokeness doesn't sell, and they know it. And Budweiser, Bud Light is no longer the number one beer. It's the number 3 beer after it put the trans woman in its one of its ads. I mean, you go down the line. Disney's share price is basically the same as it was in 2014. By the way, think about that. This is after buying 21st Century Fox's entertainment assets, getting bigger, doing this, and that. They're the same. That stock hasn't moved in 8 years. If you put your money in the S&P 500 fund, you know how much money you made in 8 years?
Yeah.
And I think wokeness is one of the reasons why people don't want to be greeted by transgender, obviously, men that are transitioning, women overtly pushing that on their kids at the parks or seeing it in the movies. And I just want to say one thing. I get a lot of blowback from conservatives because I use preferred pronouns all the time, or at least I try to, unless I, screw up. I have no problem with people, being trans and trans people. They're our colleagues, they're our friends, people related to them. These are real people that we should embrace as people. I mean, don't get me wrong here. Where I, as a libertarian in particular, start going sideways on this stuff is the proselytizing of it, the forcing of people to accept it. You shouldn't force people to accept my beliefs is where I'm going. And that in corporate America, like joining government in this sort of progressive cultural revolution just drives me nuts. It's not what they were meant to do. And they should face consequences for doing it. And that's kind of where the book comes out.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Disney is a perfect example where they came out after 13 flops in a row and said, we no longer make content for our customer.
Yes.
And so you have to realize, okay, wait a minute. Have they been captured by their employees? Why would they continue to go down the wrong road if they are a for-profit business? Then it was like, okay, I took my kids to Disneyland. I got blowback. Like, why are you there? It's like, because my kids like the rides,
Right.
And so it's like walking this fine line of not wanting to support something that you don't believe in, and at the same time still loving a company that can and should be delivering a good product. So they're an interesting example.
Yeah, and I think one thing that, I mean, this is a journalistic account, and I think one thing that I discovered in the book is that if you have very niche products, you can get away with this. I mean, I think people buy Ben and Jerry's ice cream for the tree hugger in them. You know what I'm saying? But it's ice cream. I don't think you can have, sort of broad-based, culturally important, products and corp companies that go way far left. The country is not there. I mean, at all, really. And I mean that from not just, it's not just, old white guys like me saying this. I mean, this cuts across demographics. It's just, we're not there. And we may never be there. This is a nation that's largely religious, and it just rubs religious people the wrong way. And when I say religious, Catholic, Jewish, Muslim, I mean, it's just not religious. And you have to think of the sensibilities of the radical middle when you're a company like Disney, Budweiser and AB InBev, Anheuser-Busch InBev, which owns Budweiser, Target, BlackRock. You're not selling to a niche audience. You're selling to, everybody, and everybody is not is on the ride, so to speak, to wokeness. They're not on the crazy train to wokeness.
Yeah.
Clearly not. I mean, and my book points that out.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw this or not, Charles, but President Biden said in an interview on CBS News that the KKK has always operated in hoods, but under President Trump, they got courage to take off the hood and openly come out and harass people because they had an ally in the White House. Why is Biden trying to connect Donald Trump to the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, when there is obviously no connection between the two?
I don't remember the Klan being such a big thing during the Trump years. I mean, I remember, what was a big thing. There was that Charlottesville riot, and that was unfortunate. And he made some dumb remarks about it that he wishes he probably should have said differently. I guarantee it, because I know he does. But other than that, I don't think we experienced, racial tensions of roving bands of white racists writ large. I mean, that's not the problem of the Trump years. The problem with the Trump years was the Black Lives Matter movement, it was Antifa, the increasing violence of the left. I mean, it was so obvious. And by the way, why would he say that? But this is the guy that told the black audience once that if meek and mild Mitt Romney gets elected president, he's going to put y'all back in chains. Do you remember he said that?
Yes.
I mean, what a stupid thing. And he, uses an accent with, what a dope. I mean, nothing surprises me with him.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's all a lie, obviously. Mitt Romney, of all people.
Yeah.
I mean, Mitt Romney is a cake. He compared Mitt Romney to the KKK. So, I mean, going there with Donald Trump is like, another level.
Yeah, I know. To me, it just seems so silly. You brought up Kamala Harris saying everyone needs to become more woke. What do you think she means by that? Or are we supposed to just give in to DEI? Are we supposed to?
Well, you want me to read the entire comment to get the
yes, if you could.
If I got it right here, because I knew you'd ask about that. And I'm writing a column on it, to be honest with you. She said, everyone needs to be woke, and you can talk about if you're the wokest or the woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. I mean, that's a mouthful, but doesn't surprise me. She said that with a cackle. That's what I'm talking about. I mean, it's like she's proud to be that stupidly woke. And if you're Trump and you can't make some hay out of that, I don't know, And by the way, okay, she didn't just say it. It manifests in policy. She's big into DEI, which is probably illegal at this point. You can't discriminate based on race on college admissions, and you probably can't do it at the employment right now for the same reasons. It's a violation of Title VI of the Civil Rights Act, or whichever title. I keep getting both of them mixed up, but they both basically say the same thing. And there's an employment title and there's a public accommodations title, and the employment title is basically the same as the public accommodations, which covered the university. So this is the same thing. You can't go there. It's also wrong, but that's a whole other story. We have civil rights laws that prevent discrimination. We're way beyond the point of reparations to the Black community for many, based on, what happened, 200 years ago. And by the way, I'm not a person that's against diversity. I'm for diversity. It's just this heavy hand of DEI is incredibly, it's illegal. She's for that. Where does she stand on transing of kids? I mean, I think she's for it, but I want to hear it. I mean, where's she? So there's all these woke things. I mean, taxes. She's going to raise taxes, cut them. I don't know. Let's hear it. How are you going to deal with inflation when that's all you want to do is spend money? You caused inflation. Go down the line. She's woke on every issue, lefty woke. And again, if Trump can't make some hay out of it, he deserves to lose.
Yeah, like you say, it's his to lose if he doesn't go after this correctly. Tell my audience about your book. Why did you write it? What are we going to learn by reading it?
Well, it's going to infuriate you. You're going to laugh because watching CEOs go woke is pretty damn funny because they're really bad at it, and explaining themselves is hysterical. I wrote about it because it was a big story, and when it really comes down to it, I'm a news reporter. I like breaking news. I like reporting stuff that no one else has. No one really went near this, and I covered it piece by piece. The idea came out of Silicon Valley Bank's implosion, believe it or not. It ended up 3 pages in the book, but it was like, here was a bank that had no idea that its balance sheet was imploding, but it was doing all this DEI and ESG stuff on the side and celebrating all this stuff on the side while it wasn't minding the store. And, I thought it was like a great way to demonstrate how bad this progressivism in the boardroom has become. It literally killed a bank. And then I realized it's a much bigger story. There's ESG here with BlackRock, which was BlackRock was, coming to terms with its wokeness and losing assets left and right because people were rebelling. And Larry Fink, the CEO, who I spent a lot of time with interviewing in the book, was trying to put the genie back in the bottle. There was Disney, as we pointed out. There's Budweiser. There's Target. I mean, just go down the line. Stuff at Goldman Sachs. My opening scene is a bunch of kids in 2019 at Goldman. Not a bunch of kids, a bunch of young bankers in 2019, literally having a food fight with each other because someone wanted to order Chick-fil-A, and Chick-fil-A is run by a family that believes in traditional marriage, and they were debating whether it's racist and sexist to eat one of those fried chicken sandwiches while doing a deal at night. It was stupid, but makes the point. And so I realized after diving into the Silicon Valley Bank thing, this is a bigger story. We need to find out. We need to definitionize. We need to find some definitions. What is woke? Where did it begin? Where did ESG begin? How was the evolution to this? How did it occur? And then what tipped it against it? Why were we having a revolt of the normies in 2023? And that's what the book sets out to describe. And it's pretty much up to date,
Okay.
And it includes the campus protests and the absolute horror of CEOs that gave to these campuses, not knowing that they were inculcating wokeness into their kids, who are now not just woke, but they're anti-Semitically woke, which is a huge strain in corporate wokeness. In wokeness is a huge degree of anti-Semitism, because if you believe the U.S. is systemically racist, it's hard not to make that connection with our biggest ally in the world, who is Israel, our best and biggest ally.
Yeah. Great. Well, I'm going to put a direct link to that down below. This morning I read that the head of the Chicago Teachers Union said standardized tests are junk science rooted in white supremacy, that we're only testing children so that white children can get ahead. Why would aren't Black children, Hispanic children, Asian children, aren't they mostly about the same intelligence on average? It makes no sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, listen. I remember the time when Charlie Rangel said, if you're in favor of tax cuts, you're racist because you're for depriving the welfare state or something like that. My brother is in medical school. We came from a very working class family. Neither of our parents really graduated from high school. My mother dropped out at 16. My father went to a technical school in the Bronx, so he learned to be a mechanic, electrician, stuff like that before going to the Marines. And he was a hard hat in his, as I grew up, and a bartender. So my brother and I were not the typical standardized test kids, but we took them and we did enough to get, we studied and we did well enough to get to that next level, where I went to a very good graduate school, University of Missouri Journalism School. My brother went and got a PhD from Columbia in chemistry, and he's got an MD from State University in New York. And and he runs a hospital right now, Brooklyn Hospital. These are working. We're not like just typical white kids. We're poor white kids who didn't have all the advantages, but we still made it through. And I think part of that is, part of this is standardized tests help. I think help the underprivileged black kid or white kid because it's standardized. It doesn't matter which school you went to and whether you had the best teachers in the world, or how can I put it this way? It doesn't matter that you had all this great extracurricular activity because you were working a job while you were in high school, which I was, which my brother was. It matters of your intelligence, how much brain capacity, how much you studied to get through those tests. And they do help often the underprivileged kids because it's a levelizing sort of mechanism. Everybody's standard. It doesn't matter if you go to the high school in Brookline, Massachusetts or Dorchester. It just matters that you're smart.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I thought it was kind of a strange comment. I don't fully understand white supremacy because I don't consider myself a white supremacist, even though, I have to check the Caucasian box anytime I interact with the government. Final question, Charles. I appreciate you coming on. In 2014, the Democrat governor of Missouri refused to use the National Guard on Ferguson, Missouri. There were massive riots, deaths, burning. In May of 2020, Governor Tim Walz, Kamala Harris's VP pick, he refused to have the National Guard come in against Black Lives Matter, Antifa, the George Floyd riots and burnings. Nancy Pelosi and Mayor Bowser of DC, they refused the National Guard. We end up with the Capitol riots. Why are Democrats so opposed to shutting down riots when they become violent or they end in burning? It makes no sense to me.
Well, I mean, Kamala Harris is so woke, and this might answer your question, that she said the riots should keep going. She said it. I mean, listen to her comments about this at the time. She was essentially in favor of Black Lives Matter. She said they're not going to stop, meaning the riots, and they shouldn't stop. As if it was a teachable moment to see your store burned down for something you didn't do that some cop did in Minneapolis. This is why she should be beaten easily. She's woke. That is the most woke response you can give to a question about the social justice movement and riots that followed. And she went there. She said it. She said that, they shouldn't stop.
Yeah.
And if you can't make some hay out of that, Donald Trump, then, and call Ron DeSantis to take your place, please.
Well, and Kamala Harris also asked people to donate to a fund that would bail people out that were burning buildings. It's super woke.
Oh, it's nuts. And, she owns it. And, listen, I'm not running for president. I don't vote generally, just so you know. But I will keep writing about this because I think wokeness is a horrible thing. I think think about how horrible it is. It's politically correct to say, keep burning down cities. We're not, this isn't 1960 Mississippi we're talking. We are talking, 2020 Minneapolis, 2020 New York City, 2020 Washington, D.C., all with either minority mayors or, largely, I mean, this is not, Bull Connor and, at the Edmund Pettus Bridge. I mean, we are talking a much different situation, but woke equates the two. It takes a leap of illogic that I've never seen, but allegedly smart people go there. Half of me says, thank God they did, because I got a whole book out of it, but
Well, I appreciate you spending today with me and going through this. I'm going to put a direct link down below. If people want to follow you online, where can I point them?
At C. Gasparino, Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Instagram. I'm easy to find.
Okay, great. I will put those direct links down below. Charles, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Steve. I really